No, absolutely not. And I got to take issue with the premise of the question.
Thanks, Corinne. John, you made a point throughout the briefing about mentioning that this was a non-binding resolution that the U.S. abstained on. Last week's resolution that the U.S. brought forward, was that binding or non-binding?
You said the resolution is not binding. Is it non-binding, or is it binding but not enforceable and no consequences for Israel, for example, if they don't abide by the ceasefire?
On the non-binding thing, the UN Secretary General said after the vote, this resolution must be implemented. You say it's non-binding, so who is right here? And if it's non-binding, if, as you say, it does not change anything, why has the administration blocked so many pretty similar resolutions in the past?
John, on this resolution that the U.S. abstained to today, that was within the power of the United States to block, the Prime Minister said it gives Hamas hope the international pressure will allow them to accept a ceasefire without the release of our hostages. Is he wrong?
Yes.
Does the U.S. still have leverage to change language of future resolutions now that this language, without the Hamas component, has been put into place?
Well, let's see. I mean, there's just voted on this non-binding resolution today. I don't know of additional text that's coming.
John, what was the president's reaction to the decision by Netanyahu not to send an Israeli delegation this week?
I got to tell you, Steve, we're kind of perplexed by this. A couple of points that need to be stated and, in fact, restated. Number one, it's a non-binding resolution, so there's no impact at all.
By even abstaining, because normally there may be some attempt at the Security Council or the UN overall to condemn Israel every so often for whatever reason, and the U.S. usually stands up and vetoes those resolutions. Here now, for the first time in a while, the United States is at least abstaining and allowing it to go through. So the perception broadly is that the U.S. is no longer got Israel's back when it comes to conversations like this with the UN.
Yeah, that's just not true, Ed. Nothing could be further from the truth, quite frankly. Of course we still have Israel's back. I mean, as you and I are speaking, we are still providing tools and capabilities, weapon systems, so that Israel can defend itself against which we agree is still a viable threat to Hamas. Again, no change by this non-binding resolution on what Israel can or cannot do in terms of defending itself.
U.S. officials today saying Netanyahu's acting this way because he's facing some domestic political pressure. There's domestic political issues going on. Aren't there also domestic political pressures facing President Biden? And that's part of the reason why y'all are allowing this to happen today?
I can't speak for
members of the Democratic Party saying he's doing this wrong. You got the general public suggesting his support for Israel is misplaced. Is that part of why this is going through?
No, absolutely not. And I got to take issue with the premise of the question. The president makes decisions based on the national security interests of the United States. And this decision to abstain on this resolution is in keeping with the national security interests of the United States. And quite frankly, it's in keeping with the national security concerns of the Israeli people.
Doesn't this whole episode speak to a pretty poor state of relations between U.S. and Israel right now? And how much is the president losing his ability to influence Bibi Netanyahu with everything that's happening?
Israel's still a close ally and a friend. The defense minister is here as we speak, just in the other room. We still have a very close relationship with our Israeli partners and with the government in place. As we've said many times, it doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything, and by goodness, we don't. But that's what friends can do. You can disagree, you can have those conversations, but we all recognize how important it is that Israel still be able to defend itself. At the same time, making sure that humanitarian assistance is getting in, civilian casualties come down, and we get those hostages out.
Thanks, Admiral. Just following on that question, how would you characterize the relationship in specific between Netanyahu and President Biden, since he didn't call President Biden to notify him about the cancellation of this delegation visit? Is their relationship at a new low?
I wouldn't describe it that way at all. I don't really have much more to add. I think I got the same question on Friday. These are two leaders who have known each other for going on now 4 decades. And they haven't in the past agreed on everything, and they don't agree on everything right now. But they both agree on one really important thing, and that is the importance of the state of Israel, the importance of the security of the Israeli people, the importance of making sure that an attack like the 7th of October doesn't happen again.
But is the president concerned about that Rafah invasion now moving forward in a way he doesn't want it to, since he's not able to have this?
We have the same concerns about a major ground offensive in Rafah that we had yesterday and the day before.
And just lastly, an administration official said there could be domestic political reasons for why Netanyahu responded in the way he did. Could you elaborate on what those domestic issues in Israel could be?
No.
Admiral, is it your expectation that the defense minister has with him the kind of operational details you've been looking for on a potential Rafah mission? Do you think he possesses that, and would that likely come up in the meeting?
Oh, he's at the top of the chain of command of the Israeli Defense Forces, so we're quite certain that he has enough visibility on what their thinking is about Rafah to be able to share that if he chooses to.
Does the president feel the delay of this other delegation meeting that he wanted? Is there a sense that there is an urgency in terms of lives when you're considering humanitarian crisis we've talked about, potential for military operation? Does he view this kind of a delay on that sort of meeting as potentially causing much further harm to those in Gaza or this very delicate situation?
Well, there's two ways to approach that. I mean, one is we haven't seen any indication that the Israelis are imminently getting ready to conduct a ground operation in Rafah, and we have not seen their plans for that, operational plans for that. So there's no, just to be clear, there's no sense right now that this is about to happen in coming days. Now, when it would happen is, of course, be up to the Israelis. But so, just in terms of timing, it seems like they're a ways off here from actually moving into Rafah. That said, does the president feel a sense of urgency about the suffering in Gaza? Absolutely, which is why we've been pushing so hard to get additional crossings open, get more trucks in, even while we're negotiating for a hostage deal, still trying to do everything we can to improve the humanitarian situation on the ground, continuing to do airdrops. Now we've got this temporary pier that's at sea, moving its way over to the Mediterranean as we speak today. The president's put a lot of energy and effort and made the team put a lot of energy into effort.
On the non-binding thing, the UN Secretary General said after the vote, this resolution must be implemented. You say it's non-binding, so who is right here? And if it's non-binding, if, as you say, it does not change anything, why has the administration blocked so many pretty similar resolutions in the past?
Because they didn't condemn Hamas. I've said that repeatedly.
This one doesn't condemn Hamas either.
Because they didn't condemn Hamas, and because they also just called for a ceasefire with no linkage to the hostages. This one, the reason why we can't support it but didn't veto it is because it does link hostages and a ceasefire, which is in keeping with our policy.
And on the binding thing, is it binding, non-binding?
It's a non-binding resolution.
Okay. On the UN Security Council resolution, if there were to be language added to it, updated to it, that condemns Hamas, would the U.S. support that resolution? Is that what you were saying?
That's pretty speculative, MJ. I don't know if I can go there. I mean, this one just passed. As I said, it's a non-binding resolution. I don't know of any additional text that's coming up before the Security Council, so I don't want to get ahead of where we are right now.
Well, you were specific about the language and the reasons in the past for vetoing it and now just abstaining from it. So I'm just wondering if the language were to be updated to...
I know of no plans to update the language that was just passed this morning. So again, we'd have to, if additional text gets brought before the council, then I guess we'll have to examine it like we do every time. But I don't think it would be a useful exercise to speculate on language that doesn't exist right now.
Thank you. I have a technical question and another question. On the technicality, you said the resolution is not binding. Is it non-binding, or is it binding but not enforceable and no consequences for Israel, for example, if they don't abide by the ceasefire?
My understanding is a non-binding resolution.
Okay. Are you aware of reports that Palestinian women were sexually harassed and some even were raped in the Shifa hospital by the Israeli army? And have you seen also videos of Israeli drones targeting civilians in Khan Yunis? And if you're not aware of these incidents?
I am not. This is the first I'm hearing of that.
I mean, if you want...
Those are troubling allegations, obviously, troubling reports.
The
So
State Department confirmed one of them.
Let me take the question back.
Okay,
See if
please.
we can get you a better response.
Thanks, Kareem. John, you made a point throughout the briefing about mentioning that this was a non-binding resolution that the U.S. abstained on. Last week's resolution that the U.S. brought forward, was that binding or non-binding?
I have to get an answer for you and go back on that.
You don't know that answer?
I don't have that answer for you, but I'll take the question and I'll get back to you.
And if it was binding or non-binding, why would it matter? Why would that matter? Why is that important in terms of that resolution that the U.S. put forward last week?
Well, let me get an answer for you, and then I'll answer the second one as well.
Okay, and then one additional thing, with the resolution that the U.S. put forward last week, why couldn't the U.S. have put that same resolution forward a week before or a month before?
Because we were working with previous texts that previous countries were putting forward to try to get them into a better place. You know, it wasn't like, you know, it's not like y'all don't, this language doesn't just get cooked up and thrown onto the Security Council floor in a matter of 30 minutes. It's usually worked over time. And we were working with the authors and other countries to try to get the language into a better place. And when we couldn't, we were left with no alternative but to veto. In this case, we chose to abstain because it didn't mention anything about Hamas, but yet because it did reflect our policy view that a hostage deal has to be linked to a ceasefire.